Insects are masters of the battlefield. From the lone hunters to the mass rank and file, siege warfare, camouflage and chemicals are all mighty tactics in their armoury. We'll take a look at how insects and arthropods use an arsenal of weapons to defend and attack. And meet the incredible killer armies of the insect war zone. I'm Jake Willers, on the battlefield with the insects from hell. This is 55 ton of military hardware, capable of withstanding heavy artillery and can crush almost anything in its path. But compared to the military might of the insect world, it's a pushover. This biological killing machine is a society so complex and advanced that it bonds into a single unit, swarming across the forest floor and killing any animal unfortunate enough to be in its way. Army ants are popularly regarded as one of nature's consummate predators. They locate and attack their prey in massive group raids, biting their victims to death. The African cousins of these mighty ants will invade a body through any opening, stinging and suffocating as they go. They have even killed humans trapped in their path. It's easy to compare their behaviour to the manoeuvres, strategies and logistics of the human war zone. Army ants are terrifying in their sheer scale and destructive behaviour. When these forces take to battle, there is nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. These swarms can be 15 metres wide and raid an area of 1,500 square metres a day. Many of their victims are insects, so it's no wonder they have devised a range of tactics to avoid capture. And just like the array of human military hardware, one of the insects and arthropods' best defence tools is body armour. This mini biological tank can be found pushing its way through the leaf litter and foraging for rotting vegetation. If you think millipedes are small and insignificant members of the natural world, think again. They are armoured vehicles of the arthropod kingdom, and they need to use every tactic available just to stay alive. Millipedes come in a variety of shapes and sizes. They can grow up to 30 centimetres and host a range of protective weapons, from noxious fluids to the protective armour covering their body. The Chieftain tank can fire a 120mm shell at a range of over 5 kilometres. Now that's pretty impressive. And so is the millipede. Their myriad legs move in unison like the tracks of a tank. Some can even fire chemical missiles up to 1 metre away. Most millipedes release chemicals from the defensive glands along their body segments. These chemicals can be as potent as hydrogen cyanide and have been known to burn humans and cripple dogs. Like our own military machines, these creatures are built for combat. The best example of body armour in the insect world is that of the beetles, the largest group of insects on Earth. Their hard exoskeleton forms a protective shield across their body. These armoured panels are actually wing casings. In some species where flight is no longer a necessity, they are fused together. And when body armour fails, their huge mandibles always come in handy.
Look at that, look. It's quite good flying. Can you get that?
Rhino beetles are some of the largest members of the beetle family. In fact, size for size, it's claimed that the rhino beetle is the strongest creature on Earth, capable of carrying 850 times its own body weight on its back.
It's hard to imagine 850 of these piled on top of each other.
Male rhino beetles are easily recognisable from their horns, which surprisingly are not there for combat, other than the occasional battle with another male over a feeding site. While the rhino beetle uses its horn for pushing its way through earth and leaf litter, other beetles just use their heads like mini battering rams. They are like natural all-terrain vehicles, with separate body parts and hard casings. They can manipulate every environment, but that's not all. Beetles can also fly. We have yet to design a military vehicle which can beat that. Insects have a range of weaponry to survive nature's battlefield. Body armour like beetles, millipedes with their noxious substances, and mass attackers like the army ants. They can smell disgusting, taste foul, and contain highly toxic compounds. For the poor predator, knowing which is safe to eat is a bit like walking through a minefield.
In the microscopic world of arthropods, it's every creature for itself. Even a simple stroll could end in disaster.
But it's not only the insects which deploy military-style battle tactics. The arachnids have a few tricks of their own. This Opilione is better known as a harvestman, and it certainly packs a chemical punch. Opilione have a pair of scent glands that secrete foul liquids, which they either spray or throw at any attacker. And there are plenty of creatures waiting in line. Harvestmen are at the mercy of birds, insects, reptiles and spiders. If that fails, a further defence tactic in the harvestman's armoury is the ability to shed their legs. They can release a limb which will continue to twitch and distract a predator, while the rest of the body makes a quick getaway. This one's obviously had a couple of lucky escapes. He only has 6 of his legs left. But when it comes to disgusting odours, this creature is one of my favourites.
This is a death's head cockroach, called so because of the mark on the back of its head, just here. Now it lives in the leaf litter on the forest floor. It actually helps with decomposition by munching up all the rotting leaves. But it's not a pest, and judging by the size, that's probably a good thing.
Death's head cockroaches can reach lengths of up to 8 centimetres and can be as wide as 4 centimetres. These cockroaches produce a revolting odour as a defence mechanism, and I have to say it would certainly send me running. Like their pest cousins, the death's head cockroach is omnivorous, so they'll eat virtually anything available. Cockroaches have 2 cerci at the back of their bodies, which detect movement. They sense the arrival of any predator trying to sneak up from behind in time to release their odorous weapon. It's a bit like having eyes in the back of their heads. Insects have an array of chemical artillery, which they deploy not only in defence, but on the attack.
These are red imported fire ants, and this colony could reach up to about 250,000 ants in size.
Although native to South America, red fire ants are on a mission to conquer the world. And they've certainly been successful in setting up base camp here in Florida, in the southern USA. Red fire ants are extremely aggressive and outcompete native ants. They arrived in the USA in the 1930s, probably on trade ships, have gradually spread and are still on the move. Their rapid and successful reproduction means they can colonise new territories in a matter of months. Up to 97,000 queens can be produced per acre of land per year. Only a few of these numbers survive, but when they start laying, they can produce 1,600 eggs per day. Red fire ants attack at the slightest provocation and show no mercy. If I was to disturb this nest and keep my arm there, they would swarm up my arm and release a pheromone, which is a signal to sting simultaneously. This sting is extremely painful, brings up welts with pustules, and burns like fire, hence their name. The pheromone is a chemical signal passed through the ant colonies like a military command. Red imported fire ants are omnivorous. They'll eat almost any plant or animal material. Most of the human encounters with these ants are accidental, usually when people step on a nest. The ants latch onto the flesh with barbed mandibles and sting repeatedly, pivoting in tiny circles until they die. Their stings are rarely life-threatening to humans and larger animals, but they will easily kill birds and even newborn calves. Insects use an array of tactics to escape predators. Chemical weapons and armour are all part of their protective kit. But some insects are built to kill. We'll return to our army ants and meet the deadly assassin with cannibal tendencies. Insects are masters of disguise and survival. Considering they're a source of food for virtually every other creature on the planet, including each other, it's hardly surprising. But sometimes they fight back. I'm going to step into the path of the killer army ants and explore the power of colour. But first, let's take a look at a well-known military tactic designed by insects. There are a host of wild predators just waiting to snack into a tasty insect meal. So it's no wonder that insects have mastered a range of military-style artillery and tactics to avoid being eaten. One of these strategies is simply not to be found in the first place.
Camouflage is the art of concealment.
We think of camouflage in terms of warfare. Soldiers melt into the background by wearing special clothing, smearing mud on their faces, or putting their machines in disguise. The French were the first to use camouflage in a military setting, when they created a camouflage division in 1915 during World War I. The word comes from the French camoufler, meaning to blind or veil.
But rather than hiding behind an object, insects that use camouflage are entirely exposed, yet still blend perfectly with their environment.
Exposed hiding can make for the perfect attack.
There's a praying mantid just up here, which is sitting on the wire. And this is a great environment for her, because she's waiting to ambush some of the other insects that have come to the light trap.
Fortunately for this beetle, this praying mantis prefers soft-bodied prey. These silent assassins use camouflage and ambush to trap their prey. They wait motionless, invisible, for the target to get into range and then strike with their formidable front raptorial limbs, impaling their captives with these sharp spines. This strike action is so fast the human eye can't detect it. This mantis has large compound eyes with stereoscopic vision, and its head can turn through more than 180 degrees, keeping watch from all angles. Mantids are capable of holding prey in one limb while attacking a second with the other, and they'll devour both victims. And they're not picky about their food, even eating each other. Once every last millimetre of the prey is consumed, the mantis will clean its forelegs, keeping these weapons in pristine condition, ready for the next unsuspecting victim. With an 85% kill rate, mantids are a supreme predator, silent, deadly and accurate. But it isn't the only insect to use camouflage.
One of the masters of camouflage is the stick insect or walking stick. These surreal-looking creatures can reach lengths of 30 centimetres, yet even at this impressive size, they still manage to blend perfectly with their environment. Now you see him, now you don't.
Stick insects belong to a group known as phasmids, from the Greek phasma, meaning phantom or ghost. They spend 95% of their time motionless, but if disturbed, they use their resemblance to a twig or leaf to imitate their surroundings, gently rocking from side to side. Stick insects come in a range of styles. Some can even change colour. But while the stick insect rarely fails in its attempt to blend in with the scenery, there are occasions when it can all go wrong.
Just found this chrysalis on the building here. There's a butterfly. He's still got quite a way to go before it emerges. You can just make out his eyes, just here. Small circle at the tip there. His abdomen here at the top. And he's tied onto the building with a silken thread or tie. And around its thorax there, you just see its wings. These guys have great camouflage when they're in a tree. Not sure it's working so well here though.
It's incredible that this chrysalis uses camouflage to escape predation during the process of metamorphosis. Yet caterpillars often use the opposite effect to defend themselves from attack.
I've just found this brightly coloured caterpillar. Now, his colouring is known as aposomatic, which means warning coloration, to ward off predators from coming down and eating him.
This tiny poison arrow frog is one of the animals made famous by this type of defence. Its bright colours deter attackers, like snakes, and quite rightly so. These frogs are among the most toxic animals known to man. Just a tiny droplet of its poison can kill an adult human, and each frog carries enough to kill 100 people. This Tarchon caterpillar may not pack as toxic a punch as its frog neighbour, but it still has a good reason for that bright red coloration. One of its natural predators is the giant tropical ant, which inflicts a painful and often lethal sting. But the sticky hairs all over the caterpillar's body prevent the ant from getting a good enough grip. And if the ant should find himself lucky enough to get through the first line of defence, he'll soon regret it, as the sticky substance will actually cement his jaws together. Caterpillars have an interesting array of weapons against natural enemies. While some regurgitate plant toxins on their attackers, others use spines or sticky hairs to get their message across. Stick insects merge with their surroundings, and caterpillars scare away unwelcome interest with their bright coloration. But there is another insect that actually pretends to be something it isn't, to avoid being eaten. This hoverfly uses mimicry to avoid being eaten by birds and other insects. Although it has no lethal weapon of its own, it can confuse its enemies by resembling the coloration and sometimes behaviour of a more potent species, like a wasp. Predators learn from their unpleasant mistakes, so they'll avoid a second meal that is likely to leave a bad taste in their mouths. So perfect is this copycat formula that some hoverflies will even mimic the stinging action of the wasp. Man has a wealth of military might at his disposal, but in the insect world, weapons of war are part of their biological makeup. Yet even with the array of chemical and biological missiles hidden under those exoskeletons, there is one force on the insect battlefield which nothing can stop. When animals in the forest start to run for cover, it can only mean one thing. There is an army on the move. These vast insect armies migrate en masse. They are the ultimate coalition task force, the ants from hell. Moving swiftly through the forest, they communicate their commands using chemical signals, or pheromones, produced in special glands.
As these swarms of migrating ant armies advance, it sends any creature unfortunate enough to be in its path into panicked retreat. Anything left behind is sure to be on the army ant menu.
This deadly task force is like an efficient military machine. They have a single mind and a single purpose: to survive and conquer. The scale of this invading force is terrifying enough, but their uncompromising killer instinct sends shivers down your spine. They crush anything which gets in their way. Any creature unfortunate enough to be in their path will be dismembered and carried piece by piece to the enemy nest. Army ants unite to immobilize the victim. Even with its inbuilt armor, this beetle is helpless in the face of this raiding battalion. Some ants will pin the limbs down so others can begin to bite the victim to death. Then they tear the unfortunate creature apart. And if anything proves too big for the individual to move, they work together.
Ants can carry many times their own body weight, and if they need to move things heavier, they work in teams.
These killer swarms can reach 15 meters wide, connecting with each other as a single unit. Army ant colonies have a queen, a brood of developing young and blind and sterile workers. They include these awesome soldier ants that escort the raiding colonies defending its members. Soldier ants are born with mighty mandibles, which they use for attack, defense, and as building tools. These mandibles are so huge they are unable to feed themselves and have to rely on workers to provide them with meals. They are dedicated fighting machines, the super militia of the forest battlefield. When the occasion arises to set up camp, army ants fasten onto each other using their mandibles and claws to create a temporary nest or bivouac, protecting the queen and her brood inside the living structure. Colonies can contain up to 20 million individual ants and can consume up to 100,000 arthropods a day. They have been known to kill tarantula, scorpions, small mammals, and can climb trees to capture birds. Nothing gets through the powerful force of this marching ant army, and there are only a few who would actually try.
There's definitely one thing that humans and army ants have in common: war.
Man stockpiles vast arsenals of military weapons and machinery, but our organisational capabilities don't compare to the structural complexities of the army ants. Insects may be small, but they are a might to be reckoned with. Scale for scale, it's easy to see who the real winners are in nature's war zone.
From the lone hunters to armies of ants, simple ambush to siege warfare, sudden death to black ops, insects are masters of the battlefield.
In massive groups.